Good morning, Leadwerks engineers. Today we have another exciting episode of Weekend Workshop, where we review the progress of Leadwerks game engine development and associated technologies, and talk about upcoming plans. Today we have a first screenshot showing a new artist that we are working with. His name is Rich DiGiovanni. Some of you may recognize that name because I've known Rich for a long time. In fact, Rich, he developed. So this just shows some of the environment that he's developing. He's only been at it for a few weeks, but he actually designed some sample content for me, going all the way back to 3D World Studio, and as well as content for previous versions of Leadwerks. So all this here is his work, and you might, this texture here on the wall, this brick wall texture, if you're an old SCP fan, it might actually look familiar to you because that happens to be the texture that was used for most of the walls in the game SCP-087, which was the precursor to Containment Breach. And that was just because those levels were built using 3D World Studio, and I think the author just used that brick texture because he liked it. So that's Rich's connection to SCP games in the past. Here's a cool crate that he designed, kind of based on a simple texture from the original Containment Breach. He just looked at it and he turned it into a whole 3D model. I like these handles here on the edges here. I mean, the original was just a box with a texture on it. That's all it was. And he just looked at it and imagined something new. And I guess this is actually like a crate for holding some SCPs. So for transporting anomalous entities. And that didn't even occur to me. I didn't even know what it was. I was just like, oh, this is some weird science fiction thing. See what you can do with that. And he decided, oh, this is a crate that's used for transporting these things. That was probably now that I see it, that was probably always the intention. I just didn't realize it. Just looking at the simple texture. So that's kind of cool how he just took something and reimagined it into something new. So that's for our game, codenamed SCP Redacted. You can find that more about that on the website at leadwerks.com/SCP. Rich, I don't think you have your microphone. I think he's on his phone, so he's here, but he's not on it. I think he's on his phone. He probably doesn't have voice. Feel free to chime in if you do have, if you want to say anything. But
yeah, hi
okay.
Guys, I'm driving, so I can't talk too much right now. Just wanted to jump in and say hi.
And you've done work. Do you want to talk about like some of your other background work outside of Leadwerks?
Yeah, I've been doing this for over 20 years now. Everything from indie games to developing attractions at Disney World. It's anything that involves a 3D environment. That's my specialty.
Yeah. What was the Disney stuff that you did, the artwork for that?
Yeah, some of the attractions, I can't say specifically what, but some of the attractions at Disney World, a lot of the research and development at their labs there in California is fun. And then other theme parks like Lionsgate Entertainment, stuff with DARPA, U.S. Marines, NFL, F1 Racing. Long time ago, Obsidian Entertainment, Gearbox Software. It's just been so much I don't even remember. Doing this forever.
All right, now tell us all about the DARPA stuff.
The DARPA stuff was it was
you don't have to.
Simulation for U.S. military.
Okay. Yeah, that was I knew you wouldn't be able to, but yeah. So I've known Rich a long time. He's very easy to work with and very talented. And so I told him about this project, and I was like, "Hey, is this something you're interested in? I think you'd be actually really good at this." Even though we haven't done anything like in recent years, not for any reason really. Just it did just I don't know. But he liked the idea, and so he's now part of the team. I am happy to say, and now we have enough screenshots and stuff that now we can kind of show it off and introduce him. So thank you,
These
Rich.
are all work in progress, and a lot more refinement, details, and development to come.
Yeah, this is all kind of a first pass, but so far I'm very happy with what he's doing. So thank you very much, Rich. There's another shot. I like these. They kind of look. It kind of looks like a horse trailer now. Like I did not like looking at the original. I did not even see that it was supposed to be like a container for these things, and now I can totally see it. And again, I like the handles here. These are very cool. I added actually like yesterday. I added he added a door for these, and I added the physics for the door. Um, so let me show you. Yesterday I wrote a blog article, and this was all about setting up multi-body interactive physics. This is a really good article, and it just walks through my whole process for setting this up and some of the issues I ran into. I had to build a fairly detailed collision shape for each of these. Um, it was easier just to have one drawer and just focus on building one drawer and then just place it in the scene in like a prefab. That worked out better. And you can download that script, that code right here, the slider joint. It's pretty simple. Um, I had some problems with one thing that was kind of interesting is if two objects are connected with a joint, they will not collide with each other. However, if the two drawers are connected to the cabinet, but they're not connected to each other, so they were still colliding with each other. And I had some problem. I had like some overlapping collision shapes here. So I went back and I changed the shape. However, I think I can probably just set the collision type for the drawers so that they don't collide with each other. And as long as the whole assembly isn't going to move, the drawers will move. But as long as the cabinet itself does not move, then that should be fine. And I don't think I want the player to be able to grab the whole cabinet and knock it over. I think I just want the cabinet itself to be static in the scene and just have the drawers move. So I think that's probably what I'm going to do. And once I do that, then I won't have to pay too much attention to, if the drawers collide with each other a little bit. I won't have to worry about that being exact, because the collision will be disabled between them anyways. That's using the scene collision type. So I think that's the solution that I'm probably going to use. Another interesting thing that came up is when you're pushing these drawers in, it's really easy for them to form kind of a stair step shape. And if they do, just for a moment, then if you're pushing against them, then the player will just step up one and then the next and then the next and then the next really, really fast. And suddenly you're on top of the filing cabinet. So that was so based on that, I was like, oh, we probably need like a setting, like a per entity setting that will disable that stair stepping behavior with the player. That was just another thing that I had discovered that I could only discover through actually using my own software to make a game. And I'll show you the final result I got. It's not perfect, but it basically works. So I'm able to use the mouse and pull the drawer out and push it back in. If I pull too hard, then it's kind of glitchy. So, I need to go back and refine that, of course. Definitely need to adjust the depth precision of that directional light there, because that's shining through the side of it. But, I mean, it basically works. And I started this yesterday, and that's how far I got with it yesterday. So, yeah, at this point, I'm pretty confident that the whole thing will work. It just needs more refinement. And this was always the plan for this game. I wanted physics to be a very... I love the physics interactions in Half-Life 2, Penumbra, Amnesia, games like that. And I wanted it to be a key part of the game. And furniture is a really great way to handle that, to add physics interactions everywhere. for several reasons. So each furniture is like an assembly, and it's kind of isolated from each piece of furniture is isolated from other things. So the thing with game physics is if you can have a lot of interactive objects strewn across the level. You can have objects that interact with each other, like drawers and things that are stacked against each other. The thing that really slows down video game physics is when you have 1,000 objects all in one pile, because then it's like you have 1,000 objects that all affect 1,000 other objects. The physics engine can't really isolate those into separate groups that can be processed on different threads. So they all have to be processed on one thread, and it gets really slow. So furniture, as long as you're not able to take a million filing cabinets and throw them all on top of each other, and I plan on these probably being static, I mean, you can have hundreds of these things strewn across the level, each with its own articulated joints, and everything's fine. Another reason it's really great, furniture is a good way to do this, is because everyone understands how it works. It's not some weird science fiction thing where you have to like pull on this thing and do something else. Like everyone knows intuitively how it works. You basically just have slider joints and hinge joints. You have drawers and cabinets. Doors or cabinets, doors. And then you have drawers or sometimes sliding doors. But everyone already understands how it works because it's something they see in real life. So this is something I like this, and it also adds more to the game because it's like if you're looking for some object, you're going to have to, sometimes you'll have to open doors or cabinets or drawers to find it. And that just adds a little bit more gameplay. This is probably too many. I wouldn't want the player to have to search through this many drawers looking for something. But, as long as but if you just have a few, then it's still fun. Another thing that occurred to me that I found out is the top drawer here is about eye level with the player. So when you open this drawer, you can't actually see inside it. So we're probably actually going to want to cut off the top drawer and just have this like 3 high, or else have the top one locked all the time or something. Because if you have to go and find a step stool so you can get up higher, so that you can look inside the top drawer, that might no longer be fun. That might be tedious. So that's just something that that's another interesting thing that you can only learn by actually using the software, myself to make a game.
I think people can actually build their own, because I think we shipped a filing cabinet with separate drawers, so they can just download the scripts and just redo exactly what you did with that filing cabinet model.
Yeah, we have another one that I think that ships with the FPS example, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be same process as this. And another feature that came out of this was in the model editor. If you go to File, there's an option to load a static collider, and there's also an option to load a dynamic collider. So a dynamic collider will take every limb, it'll load a model, and then for every limb in the model, it'll create a convex hole out of that. So a polygon mesh can be used for collision, but if you do that, the object won't have any volume, and so it'll be static in the world. It won't be able to move. If you want an object to be dynamic, like a moving drawer, then you can have a concave shape like this, but it has to be made up of multiple convex objects. Like this is made up of 5 different pieces for the sides, the front, and the bottom. And so that's what that load dynamic collider option will do. That's new too, and that's just another thing that I figured out. Oh, I'm trying to do something, I can't do it unless I add this feature. Okay, now we can do it. And the code for this, it was pretty much already set up. This is just basic pickup object code. This might need to be tuned a little bit more, either for jointed objects in general or for drawers more specifically. I'm not sure which it's going to be yet. But yeah, it turned out pretty nicely. And I just saved it as a prefab, and now we can just place our filing cabinet everywhere with articulated drawers. And I did the same thing for those crates with the doors.
We just got to put things in the drawers now.
That would be the next step. Okay. So last week we had a really good discussion. That was like one of the best episodes ever, I think, actually. And so I'd go back and look at that if you haven't seen that yet. And it started with a review of the MetaQuest 3, which is actually a pretty darn good headset for the money. Be aware of the downsides, but for $300, I don't know how you're going to get something that good. I mean, it's the image quality is awesome. Even on the 300 on the cheaper $300 one, it looked the resolution and everything was great. Yeah, okay. And I just want to review this. So my take, we also had a take on, we also, talked about ray tracing at length. And we watched a couple of videos that I recorded. This is at, let's see, what's the frame rate on this? 58 frames per second, so it's not like the frame rate is slow. What I'm seeing in any path traced games, and path tracing is just rebranded global illumination. It's just a new word. Watch what happens when you throw it. He's gonna throw it in a minute. Come on, come on. Ugh. So there's like at least a full second there of latency while those reflections resolve. And when people see any kind of temporal artifact like that, they always blame TAA or DLSS, and it's not. This is the lowest screen resolution possible with those things disabled. This is due to the ray accumulation, which is fundamental to ray tracing. So ray tracing, it can be done. It can handle sharp reflections on a high-end GPU. You can do that. Anything other than that, it can't really do it. Not really. And so because it can't do it, the only way it can do it is by spreading the number. It requires thousands of rays instead of just one. Because otherwise you'll have like an enormous amount of noise. And still, in addition to that, you still need to have a denoising step. But it requires thousands of rays, and it has to distribute that task across many, many frames. So that's probably, distributing it. That's, if it's a full second at least, then that's 60 frames worth of ray casts are going into that image. That's why there's so much latency. And then you see the same thing in Half-Life RTX. With any objects that are in motion, you can see that shadow hanging around for a long time. It looks really, really bad. And this is like, I think this is like 54, 58 frames per second. So it's not like the frame rate is slow. I mean, it could be a few frames faster, but even if it was a solid 60 frames per second, I don't think this issue would be resolved. My take on ray tracing right now is it could be good for sharp reflections, and we can access it. There is a way for us to access that with OpenGL, but it doesn't appear to me that it's really practical for anything else. It looks to me like the latency on any kind of rough reflection for ray tracing. It looks to me like the latency is a deal breaker, even on high end hardware. As far as I know, like even on a 5090, you're still going to have that latency. People with 4080s are telling me that they see the same thing. If anyone out there with a 5090 can tell me that this is a solved problem, that they don't have this problem when they run Portal RTX on a 5090, then I'll change my mind. But based on what I'm seeing, it doesn't appear to me that ray tracing is for like as a full lighting solution. It doesn't appear to me that it's a very desirable thing. And there's kind of like two paths we can take. One is the Doom, the Dark Ages, where you need a ray tracing card to run it, where it's required. The other is, the Battlefield 6 approach. Battlefield 6, there's a free demo of it right now. It hasn't been released yet, but there's a free beta, and you can get that on Steam right now. I installed that on my laptop because I wanted to see how it would run on my laptop with a 1660 Ti, which is that's probably about the equivalent of like a GeForce 1060. And it ran, and it looked great. I was only getting about 30 frames per second, but it looked awesome. This is Battlefield 6. It looked like this on my laptop at 1080p. This is Doom the Dark Ages. I don't see a dramatic... I mean, they both look pretty good to me. I don't see a dramatic difference, like a dramatic improvement in Doom the Dark Ages with that approach. And it won't run at all on my laptop. So, this really looks to me like it's going to be like a better approach. And it's not like we just need one more generation of cards to come out and then everybody will have ray tracing cards. It's not like originally I was saying, I was thinking like it's going to be 10 years before the average person has a good ray tracing card. I'm actually going to modify that based on what I've seen now. I think 10 years from now, high-end GPUs are still going to have these latency problems, because to solve that, to eliminate it, ray tracing would have to get 60 times faster. Like, cards would have to get 60 times faster than they are now. Between 2010 to 2020, NVIDIA cards gained the number of cores in NVIDIA cards went up 18 times. Between 2020 and 2025, the number of cores in NVIDIA high-end cards went up 23%. So it doesn't look like, it looks like for the 2020s, it looks like for that decade, it looks like we're on track to get about a 50% increase in performance. If it's based on, if we're using number of cores as a measure of performance, then yeah. So in other words, like Moore's law is dead for GPUs. It appears they've pretty much hit the same point where CPUs hit like a decade ago. You know how CPUs don't really get faster year after year. New ones come out and they're not really much faster. It looks like GPUs have kind of hit that point. I don't see them getting 60 times faster. I don't see them getting 20 times faster. I don't even see them getting 10 times faster in the next 5 years, certainly. Again, if somebody can, tell me otherwise, that Portal RTX runs with no latency on their system with the reflections and the shadows, then I will reconsider. But from what I'm seeing right now, it looks like the winning move here is to just refine and improve the well-established techniques of shadow maps. And after seeing all that, like, baked global illumination is suddenly very appealing to me after seeing the alternatives. And I'm reviewing a lot of last week, but this is a really important thing that I want to make sure everybody understands. And if I'm wrong about any of this, I want people to, I want to make sure that, people can tell me, why I'm wrong if I am, because it's a big, this is an important, thing to understand. So during the whole early access phase, Leadwerks 5 has changed quite a lot. Starting with the name, like, this originally was going to be called Ultra Engine. Instead, we decided we're going to call this just the 5th version of Leadwerks, just because Leadwerks has better brand recognition, and it's really hard to get people to accept something new today. That's why every movie is a remake. That's why every movie is a sequel. Like, I don't know why you can't introduce something that's totally new today. People just can't handle it conceptually. Like, nothing new can exist. I don't know why that is, but it definitely, like, that phenomenon, whatever it is, like it definitely is true. I mean, there's definitely truth to it. So originally, like Ultra Engine was launched with the idea that, well, this is great for performance with VR in mind in particular. So this is going to be like the perfect user for this would be Unity developer, VR developers who have hit performance problems with the rendering because Unity performance is terrible on VR. Um, it turns out developers don't really care about performance, and we're seeing it's not just me saying that. Like we're seeing a lot of the people who play games, they care about performance and they're complaining about it. You can easily find tons and tons of videos about this subject on YouTube right now. There's like entire YouTube channels that are all they do is complain about performance in games. This is a really weird thing. I couldn't have possibly predicted this, but it doesn't really seem like performance is a selling point for developers. It probably is for gamers, but not for the developers themselves. They just don't seem to care. I don't think it's even on the list of things that they make decisions about. It's kind of like, if it's better. I mean, of course, if they have the choice, it's better, but it's not anybody something. It doesn't really seem like it's something that people prioritize. The original use for Ultra Engine was VR games in particular, and also like large scale simulations, like space simulations and stuff like that. For Leadwerks 5, I'd say we've kind of refocused on small and medium-sized indie games. And by medium-size, I mean something as big as the biggest Crisis level, which is like 16 square kilometers. So anything that fits into 32-bit floating point precision is great for Leadwerks 5. I don't really want to do... I don't want to try to do video games where you just walk around an endless area and you have stuff streaming in and out of memory, because it's very complicated, and it also changes the developer experience. It becomes a lot more tedious because you have to account for things going in and out of memory. You don't just have everything in the level at once, and you have all kinds of issues with all these games that stream in areas. They always have problems with stuttering, and if we can just avoid all of that and just focus on something and just focus on small to medium sized games, meaning as big as the biggest Crisis level, then I think that's a much. If we just draw the line there and we say this is the scope of what we're doing, I think that just provides a better developer experience and a better experience for players. My take on games, who's going to make the big flagship game for this engine? With Ultra Engine, it was like, well, I'm just going to stick to the tools. You make the games. That's not really my problem. I'm just the tool maker. With Leadwerks 5, I decided, well, this engine is so great. I actually want to use it to make my own game, and that's what the SCP game is. Because it's like this software is so good. I actually want to use it myself. I like it so much. And in fact, I'm not sure exactly the details of this yet, but I'm probably going to include the level editor as a modding tool for the game. That's what we're planning on. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work out yet, but it's like, if I've got this software and I also have the ability to even distribute my own custom level editor for my game, that seems like an opportunity like too good to pass up. So that's where the SCP game came from. With Ultra Engine, the idea was to push advanced and experimental techniques as hard as possible. What we've seen is these advanced and experimental techniques, they haven't really panned out. I did some work with like voxel-based global illumination. Unreal Engine's Lumen is the best implementation that's been done of that, and it sucks. It's got so many problems. You can find, again, you don't have to believe me. You can just search for on YouTube for videos, of all the artifacts and stuff you're going to see in like Stalker 2, and it's got so many problems. It's just not worth doing. I think the approach with Leadwerks 5 is to refine and improve the well-established techniques. I mean, with Battlefield 6, what the reason it looks good is because they just took established techniques that work well, that are proven and battle tested, and they just cranked the resolution of everything up, and it looks awesome. Um, with as far as documentation goes, my take here with Ultra Engine was I just write the documentation for the classes, for the commands, mostly aimed at programmers, and that's it. As long as I just have it well documented and you can look it up, then the rest of it isn't really my problem. I don't have to teach you anything because you already know how to program. With Leadwerks 5, it turns out no, the user for this, they want video tutorials. They want everything to be aimed at beginners. This is something that they liked at Leadwerks 4. Excuse me. The point where Leadwerks 4 kind of let them down was because it taught them how to use the editor. It taught them how programming works, but it didn't really teach them game programming. It was just like, okay, well, this is how the language works. Here are the command. Here's the syntax for the commands. Now go make your game. If the majority, I don't know what percentage, but a large amount of people who are coming into Leadwerks, the reason they start with it is because they want to learn how to code games. They're not afraid of code, which is good. We don't really hear a lot of people saying like, "Wouldn't it be great if you could make games without programming?" Because people have tried all those approaches and they always turn out to be more complicated. Like once you get into it, you end up with something way more complicated than code. Computer code is actually like a really compact way of representing logic. And all attempts to get around that have failed. So we don't really, they're not afraid of programming, which is good. But they want me to teach them. They want me to sit down in video and teach them how to do it in video format. That's overwhelmingly what they prefer is the video format. Okay, so that's something significant to keep in mind. The overall design, or like I guess like the selling point of the engine in Ultra Engine, its performance. Well, it turns out developers don't really prioritize performance. They do, but there's a lot of people out there who prioritize ease of use and learning. That kind of goes along with the previous point. And that was the main selling point in Leadwerks 4, and Leadwerks 4 did very well. It fell short in the sense that it didn't really make that final step of teaching game programming, but it did a good job. It did a pretty good job of everything else. I think Leadwerks 5 does a better job, but it still hasn't done. I still haven't taken that final step. Here's how you code games. If I can transmit my knowledge and my understanding to beginners and have something that 80% of people can understand, that will be a very powerful thing because nobody else is really able to do that. The IDE in Ultra Engine, originally I was just going to rely on Visual Studio Code. At the time that I was starting development with Ultra Engine, like Visual Studio Code was pretty new. It was another one of these fads that, for a few months people think it's the greatest thing ever and then they forget about it. It turns out like people overwhelmingly prefer the built-in script editor. And so I had to go back and do that again. I didn't remove, we still have support if you want to use Visual Studio Code. I didn't remove anything, but I had to go back and add a built-in script editor, which we didn't have that like 4 or 5 months ago. So that's new and different. The hardware, originally I was going to focus on high-end GPUs and just make that a system requirement. With the Leadwerks 5 approach, I don't see any downside to just making it run on everything. Because the benefit you gain from focusing just on high end GPUs alone seems pretty questionable. So, and I haven't really none of this has really taken place yet. I haven't the system requirements I don't think have changed this whole time, but in the future I think the system requirements will get lower. I think in the future we'll have support for Mac, which still supports OpenGL 4.1. Like a new Mac today still runs OpenGL 4.1. Hmm, that wouldn't be that hard to do. And yeah, so that's probably the direction things are going to go in the future. And of course, a major change was we launched with using Vulkan 1.1. It turned out Vulkan isn't very good, and I just switched over to OpenGL 4.6. We can still do ray tracing if we want. We'll have to set up a Vulkan instance and only use Vulkan for the ray tracing commands, but OpenGL and Vulkan can work together. But that would be a lot easier than having Vulkan infect the entire rendering system. If we can just isolate it to the ray tracing stuff, that would be a lot easier. We also saw how last week we talked about the recent release of the Vulkan backend for Blender. It's out of beta, basically. It's kind of funny though. They make a big noise about how they're switching to Vulkan and how it's going to be so much better and how it's so great, but they still default to OpenGL. Isn't that strange? And there's all these problems reportedly with people who are using the Vulkan, and it's not in beta anymore. It's out of beta. It's still there's still a lot of problems with it. There's probably always going to be a lot of problems with it. I don't think it's ever going to be reliable. I would be surprised. I mean, they could, but I would be I would bet that in the next 3 years, Blender will still default to OpenGL. It might always default to OpenGL until some completely new graphics API comes along and that's truly better.
I think it defaults to OpenGL on systems that don't support DirectX. I think it supports DirectX. I don't know.
I installed it on my on a
Blender. Hold on. It's been a decade.
Vulkan doesn't support all the stuff that the OpenGL renderer does. That's why they don't default to it.
But I thought Vulkan was better.
Yeah.
It should support everything OpenGL does and more.
Yeah, there's no upsides other than the imaginary performance benefits if you can reach feature parity.
Yeah, so I called that and in last week's video, I called that section the tech industry's schizophrenic break with reality. I think. Because that's really what it is. There's the official story that we all believe and we all agree with. And then there's reality. And it's funny how even these companies who are, talking about how great this technology is, well, it's really great. We just don't want to use it ourselves. We don't want to rely on it exclusively. If it was really so great, why does Blender 4.5, why does it even have OpenGL support? It should just be Vulkan. If they were going to switch to Vulkan, why didn't they switch to Vulkan? I went whole hog into I went all the way. I was all in on Vulkan. I only supported Vulkan, and I got burned on that. So I mean, it's pretty. I would say that the situation has changed in the last couple of years, and it's pretty widely recognized that Vulkan has systemic, foundational problems with its design, and it was always a bad idea. There's definitely, not everyone will agree with that, but there's definitely a large portion of people who agree with that. And there's an even larger portion of companies who are acting as if that was true. I mean, other than id Software, I can't think of anybody off the top of my head who's relying exclusively on Vulkan. And
I think most of the work and effort went into compatibility layer instead of supporting it, making it an an actual graphics API.
It's the best driver API for making DirectX drivers for Linux, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Vulkan's so great, now you can use DirectX.
Yeah.
Its best result is that you don't have to use it.
I mean, DirectX is kind of a more stable standard than Vulkan, it seems like.
But Vulkan is powered by the limit. It's open source, and it's powered by the. It's not controlled by one company, and it's powered by the limitless power of community.
People are stupid.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, that's what I'm just saying. Like, I'm reiterating some of this stuff because it's like there's this. If you just like, I mean, there's like what the tech industry keeps repeating, and then there's reality. And that's why I call this like the tech industry's schizophrenic break with reality. Okay, so anyways, and if somebody again, like if somebody can tell me otherwise, then please, I always like having more information. If I'm wrong, tell me why. But this is like the thing with Vulkan. I don't really see any ability to go back to that because it takes about 5 times longer to get anything done with it. But when I'm saying with ray tracing, the latency problem, I don't see that being solved ever. Probably not, maybe not even in our lifetime. If you can tell me otherwise, then please do. But okay, so now I want to. Well, before we continue, do we have any questions about this stuff, or do we have any questions about the SCP game? Any questions for Rich? Let's see. I think people might have typed some things. Yeah, running on a toaster. I would like Leadwerks 5 to run on a toaster too. That would be nice.
Can it run on a 486?
A what?
A 486.
No, because maybe.
It runs my spreadsheets so well.
You would need a driver that would be compatible with that. But if you had a 486 with Linux support, no, because those are 32-bit. So it has to be a 64-bit processor. I guess that's the minimum requirement.
Now wait, is that a reference to a certain keynote that I seem to remember from way back in the day?
Yes.
Well, 486, that was like back in the day. That was like a top of the line processor. Have the top drawer only open a little bit. Then, well, if we do that, I'm afraid they might think that it's a bug. BF6. Yeah, so ray tracing is like sharp reflections and maybe some rough reflections with some latency. If you try to use it for everything, though, which is path tracing, that's just rebranded global illumination. Then it's terrible for performance. It usually looks beautiful. I think like Portal 2, I think it's like one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen. Unfortunately, it doesn't render in real time. Like the image is constantly catching up with the motion.
Yeah, it has a giant flashlight for the dynamic light.
Devs don't choose based on performance. LOL, that was the only reason I actually looked into your engine. Well, Wreckage, you are a very special person.
I'm a freak, I know.
Yeah, you think about your frame rates are important?
Like, I think for indie devs, like, most of the beginners you want coming to you are actually probably having, like, a laptop or, like, a mid-range system. So you want your engine to run really well on those systems.
That makes sense.
I don't see why. I think performance really does matter for your engine. If anything, you should be upplaying the fact that it runs well on like a 1060 or whatever the average graphics card is and stuff.
Yeah, but, probably. Yeah,
that's what I care. I really like that your engine's built to be like easily optimized for people like indie devs. can make it run fast.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Andrew asks, does Leadwerks offer Mac OS support, or will it offer that in the future, or is that not possible due to underlying technologies that aren't? So Mac, they went and I don't like the fact that they turned their computers into cell phone parts, into a computer case with cell phone parts, but they went and they did the metal graphics API, and there is something called Molten VK that's like a library that translates Vulkan commands to metal API. I think I ran like an early version of it at one point. If there's a bug, if you have a bug with that, can you imagine how many layers of just garbage there is between you and the driver? Can you imagine how hard it is to report a bug to Apple? Because it's like you don't know if the bug is in your Vulkan code, or if it's in the Molten VK library, or if it's in the graphics driver itself. Um, but to my surprise, they talk trash about OpenGL, but they can't get rid of it. They like new Macs being sold today still support OpenGL. It's version 4.1, so it's not as new as I would like, but it would not be very hard to make some small modifications and make the engine run on Mac using that. It would not be very hard, and I don't think there would be a lot of. It's not like it wouldn't really be a really compromised version. I mean, you would still be getting the same thing running on a Mac. So it's like we could jump through all these hoops and make all of these, using all these technologies that are newer that are not very good. Or we have something that's stable and works and it runs on everything. So yes, for that reason, like Mac support in the future, I would like to. I think that's a distinct possibility that I don't know exactly when, but I kind of plan on doing that. Are you sure Apple supports 4.2? I thought it was 4.1.
I thought it was 4.2, and I could be wrong.
Between 4.0 and honestly between 4.0 and 4.6, there's not a lot of changes. There's some things in there that are nice to have, but nothing like 4.0 is the big one, and then everything else is just kind of nice to have, but I can live without it.
Right.
Why does he hate Mac users?
He was being sarcastic.
I don't get it.
Being smart.
For Apple to translate 4.6 to metal, maybe. Well, it's not about trying to support old OpenGL versions. It would just be, in that case, I mean, Mac would be sort of an exception. I don't really care, outside of Mac. The only reason I would care about OpenGL 4.1 or 2 or whatever they support would be to get it to run on a Mac. But I mean, everything sold in the last 15 years will support OpenGL 4.6. So there's not really a problem with that. I would try to support. I imagine you'd be included using a layer. Molten VK. 5 years of development was burned trying to make it work. Trying to make what work?
I think that was a reference to your
Vulkan. I'd say Vulkan probably wasted probably 2 or 3, between 2 and 3 years of development time was wasted due to Vulkan. Okay. Because it takes about 5 times longer to get anything done with Vulkan, so I'm so much slower with it. Yeah, it's a horrible API, and
yeah, it was really fun that everything would work on the NVIDIA card, but nothing would work on an AMD card, and vice versa. That was really fun.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's just fundamentally flawed from the very beginning. Every developer writing their own driver, I don't know how anyone thought this was a good idea, and then it failed. I mean, it's Kronos APIs used to account for like something like 35%. Like 35% of games used to be made using OpenGL, in like 2015, and now it's like 5% of games are using Vulkan. So they completely killed their market share, but they just don't care. Um, what kind of microtransactions can we expect in the game? In this game, I wasn't planning on microtransactions, but if you guys want, I mean, maybe.
Don't actually do that. I was just joking.
People
Just
love
please don't
microtransactions.
actually do that.
People love hats. People love
skins.
well, we really, even though it's a single player game, I think we should have an anti-cheat system.
Yeah, we should put the Nuvo.
Rootkits for everyone.
Yes.
You need TPM.
Oh my god.
you
need a stable, reliable internet connection.
You have to send your ID for verification.
Oh yeah. We need to scan your face.
Yeah, UK users have to send their IDs to Leadwerks to verify that they can handle the adult content.
If it comes down to it, I'll just block the UK if I can.
Yeah.
I would rather block the UK and then comply with something like that.
Yeah.
Or just do whatever I want and tell the UK government come and get me.
Just don't travel there. They can't come get you.
Yeah, well, UK isn't a nice place to travel to anyways. No offense to anybody British, but
they don't have air conditioning there.
Voxel reflection. I tried it. I had some success with it. Okay, so voxel reflection. I actually showed some. Check out last week's video. I'm not going to go over it again. I did show some videos of like some of the stuff I had with voxel reflection. So with voxel reflections, what I found was it's not good for sharp reflections. It's not good for GI, but it is good for sort of medium roughness, like sort of rough reflections. It's actually like really great for that. I had really good results with that, and that was running on like a 1080. It'll run on a 1060. It's very performant. It's not an all encompassing solution. It's only good for sort of sharp, rough reflections. For that, it does a great job. It does a really good job for that, and the performance is fantastic, and it works really well. It can be done dynamically, so I might still integrate something like that, but I was trying to use it for like an all encompassing. I was trying to use it for GI and specular reflections at the same time, and that's just not possible. It doesn't work. You get holes once the voxel, you get holes in the geometry and stuff, and it's not feasible. Off topic. Oh, thank you for reminding me. I'll talk about that too. We accidentally found a historical screenshot from June 2017, the very beginning of work on Between the Realities. It was my hand and a couple of simple sprites drawn in paint. With your tech solutions. Let's take a look at a screenshot. Very nice. Yeah, Between the Realities. That was a cool game. Chosen One Cola. They have a very funny commercial for that. Thanks. Shadow maps are okay with me. Just wondered since it was interesting to see it working. Yeah, I mean, look at that video I took from Half-Life RTX and tell me that that's better than a shadow map. Tell me that's better than a high-end, high-res shadow. What if we just took the same hardware and just made the shadow map more higher resolution and used more samples for the edges, so it was a little bit blurrier? There's absolutely zero latency when you use shadow maps, but from what I saw, I mean, the ray tracing shadows looked horrible. If somebody can tell me otherwise, then please do. If you've got a 5090 and that problem is solved, then please tell me. But that's what I'm seeing. So, Escape Land and Salvation Land These came after Between the Realities. These are both on sale right now on Steam for a very reasonable price. We'll watch the intro for this because it's really good.
Команда принята. Внимание! Объект высвобождается. 3, 2, 1.
What an intro. Wow.
And this is a kind of placeholder teaser actually. What people will see inside is much better. Hi guys.
And we have the developer with us right here. So much detail, so much care put into this world they've crafted. And some really beautiful outdoor areas. I love the forest in this. And I'm a big fan of Stalker, so of course I like this kind of stuff. Oh, this reminds me of the Stalker movie, actually. Is that where you guys got the idea?
Reference. It was a reference.
Yeah.
On the movie.
Yeah. Tarkovsky's Stalker.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good animations on the hands and stuff. That stuff is hard to do.
Yeah. It took many years.
Did she say Dubai?
Yes.
Haha.
She did.
I know what that means. Escape Land. That's on Steam right now. On sale this week for a couple more days. I'll have a link in the video. Oh, there's my review. And yeah, so definitely check that out. I try to, and Salvation Land as well. That was their previous game. I try to support developers. Here's a link to games. This goes to the Steam, to a place on Steam where this has like pretty good visibility. So this brings traffic to your stuff. But definitely check that out, and I'll have a link in the video description on YouTube. Will the lead in Leadwerks be replaced with a less poisonous substitute in the interest of public health and safety? Best tasting paint. Yes. Funny. Funny, guys. All right. Okay, so now I want to talk about... oh, you can actually hit... I found out you can press Shift and F5 to go to the slide you're looking at. That's handy information to have. Okay, so I want to talk about the scripting system in Leadwerks 5. Now, in Leadwerks 4, we were using Tulua. It's actually Tulua++, which is a variation of Tulua for C++. That was the binding library I used. In Leadwerks 5, I'm using something called Sol. Sol, I guess, means sun in Spanish, I think. Lua, I think, in Spanish means moon. Well, so they named Sol after Lua, kind of, because it's like, oh, the moon and the sun. Fun fact, Lua originally was named after something else called Sol. some other language or something like that, I think was the story. So it's funny how like developers like keep bouncing back and forth with their naming derivatives, because it's like Sol, Lua, Sol, now it's Sol again. But this is the binding library that I use, and it's much more powerful. It allows some things that were not possible before. In Leadwerks 4, okay, I kind of got these slides out of order, but since I started focusing more on ease of use and learning, and I said, okay, like before, we're going to do some things to improve this before we come out of early access for the final launch. We're going to have a strong focus on ease of use and learning. We had a 2 times increase in the number of daily active users. Website traffic has gone up 10 times. So that's pretty good. So it appears that this, everything you're seeing on the right column here is a much, this seems like this is all the correct path. And, some of this stuff was kind of unpredictable, but, we could only figure that out by doing, we could only find the wrong thing by using the wrong approach first and then correcting. So there's very good reception for the ease of use angle. All the video tutorials I've done have had a very strong response. We have a whole over an hour long video series called the Leadwerks 5 Crash Course, and that's just talking about how to use every aspect of the editor. And then there's also something that's like an hour and 20 minutes long. There's both one video combined, and then there's separate videos in different subjects that you can watch, depending on which you prefer. And that's I think I called it How to Lua in Leadwerks 5, and that teaches all the aspects of programming with Lua. It's like the entire Lua language is taught in like an hour long lesson. And people are eating that up. Like the response from that has been very, very strong, and they're like ravenous for more. And now we've got them right at the point where Leadwerks 4 left off, where it's like, okay, we know how to use Lua, we know how to use the editor, but we still don't know how to make a game. Teach me, teach me, teach me. I want more. Like they're begging for more tutorials, and I've been thinking a lot about like what's the best way to teach game programming, because if I can transmit my understanding of game mechanics and 3D spatialization to the end user, then if we can teach all of those people, then we have an army of people who are have various levels of ability to program games finally, that's the whole promise of Leadwerks. That's the whole reason for it existing. So the success of Leadwerks 5 really hinges on my ability to transmit my knowledge to those people, many of whom have no previous programming experience before. But we're getting comments in YouTube like, I never understood this before, and now I understand it, like for the first time because of this lesson. And that's like the greatest compliment that I could ever get. And we're seeing a lot of that. So that's very cool. Okay, so the Sol binding library, it allows some new things. So in Leadwerks 4, we had all of your custom properties were stored on a separate script object. That was like I think it was a Lua table. I don't even remember how the internals of this worked, but it would be like you would have a box, you would create a box, and the box is an entity object, and then you would add a script to it. Let's say that's the FPS player script. Okay. Then all your custom properties go on the script object. So you have the entity, and then the entity has a script object, and the script object is where all your custom properties live. So that includes health, the current state that the object is in, like whether it's angry or hunting or sleeping or hungry. That state is something you can store. Anything you can imagine you can store on the script. Or in the case of, you can add a table. This weapon is a table added to the script object. And then you can add properties to the weapon object. And that's how you build things up. And so it was a little bit awkward because you had like the script object and the entity object, and they were different things, and you kind of had to like flip back and forth between those. Like if you retrieved an entity, then you had to get the script. You had to check if the script object existed, and then you could retrieve object properties from the script object if it was there. In Leadwerks 5, we've been taking this multi-component approach. So what you do is you create the box entity, and then you add a component by name, and that returns the component, and then you start adding properties to the component. Or you could say like box dot fps player dot weapon equals new table, stuff like that. So again, it's basically like Leadwerks 4, except instead of having one script object, you have multiple script objects where different properties are stored. So it's basically like a subtable, where you have all these different subtables where all the different properties are stored. In Leadwerks 5, well, what we with Soul, this allows us to attach properties directly to a user data object, which is what a C++ class is internally. It's called Lua. The Lua type is actually user data. In Soul, it's more powerful. We can attach properties directly to the object itself. So you can create a box. You can add the weapon right to the box. You can add the health value right to the box. You can set whatever property right to the box. You can even add a function to the box. If you say like box.update equals, and then you define a function, the engine could, this isn't yet, this is what I would like to do, then the engine could just detect that and start using that as the update function. So instead of having like a separate object associated with the entity where all your properties live, you can just add your properties to the entity itself, which I believe this is how Lua was always meant to be used. If I think back to my Blitz 3D days, if I could have done something like this, my life would have been so much easier. It seems extremely intuitive to me. And again, like originally with Ultra Engine, it was sort of, the deal was, well, I just need to write documentation on the classes and functions, just programming documentation. I don't really have to teach people how to use it because they're already programmers. So I was very hands off. Well, the deal has changed. And by the deal, what I mean is it's not anyone's fault, because it's not even the group's, the community's fault as a whole, because what I'm calling the deal is just my imaginary expectations for what I think will get a response. But this isn't something, nobody ever promised this, and they couldn't. Even if I went and asked every single person, it's just sort of like my expectation of how I think the community as a whole will respond. That's what I say when I say the deal, that's what I mean. Well, the deal has changed. The deal now that the new deal that I'm seeing forming is that people who are complete beginners, they're not afraid of code, and they are capable of learning. They understand this stuff, but they want me to teach them to program games. I am now responsible for teaching game programming. That's something that very significant that has changed. Whereas before I was just very hands off. I was just like, okay, I'll just add the features you want, and it's not really my problem how you use it. Okay, now it is my problem. Now I need to teach people like how to actually use this stuff. And I can tell you for sure, the bottom example here, one of the best ways to tell whether I can tell if something's too complicated is when I'm making a video about it. If I stumble over my words and if I'm having trouble explaining something, it becomes really obvious to me like what parts are too complicated and what parts I need to go back and change and what parts I need to improve. If I'm having a lot of trouble explaining something, it means that it sucks. It means that, I mean, if I can't explain it, how can anybody, even who's never seen this kind of stuff before, how can they be expected to understand it? This last example looks a heck of a lot simpler to me. This looks so much simpler to me. I mean, of course, you would be able to like call set script on this as well, but I'm just giving an example of how you would attach properties directly to an entity. Okay, now when I was writing the first-person shooter components example and the stock components, I ran into a lot of problems with the multi-component approach. So here's some code where when a bullet updates, and the bullet performs a pick operation like a raycast, and what it's doing is it's testing a line in the world, and it's testing to see if it intersects any objects. And if it does intersect an object, it gets back an entity, and it needs to do something with that entity. So with this like multi-component system, like the first way, like, you know, one of the big downsides of it is you have to know specifically what you're looking for. So, for example, you know, you have to check if the entity has a monster component in the components. Well, if that exists, okay, well, let's call pick info entity components monster add damage. Okay, cool. Okay, well, we also need to check for a soldier. Okay, if we have a dragon in our game, we need to check for a dragon. If we have some other object in our game, we need to check for that too. So that means every single component needs to be aware of what every single other component that's in use. So this is supposed to increase your modularity and reusability. Instead, it's decreasing it with that approach. Okay, let's try something else. Option B. This is what I tried second. Let's say that the health property is stored in this health manager class. And we just look for this health manager class. And if it's present, then we call this add damage method. There's some big problems with that. So let's say that this is a bullet that one of my enemies shot, and it's hitting me, and I have a function on my player class that says when add damage is called, then the camera kind of shakes because the player got hit, and so it's going to play like a sound, and it's going to make the camera like kind of move to the side momentarily in a random direction so that it feels like you're being hit, because that's a way of communicating that the player is being damaged. Well, how can we do that? We're going to need an add damage function on the player object, on the player component too. Okay. Hold on. Okay, so here's what that code might look like. The problem with that is, so the health manager add damage function, that's going to decrement the health value by the amount. Okay, that's simple enough. Okay, now the player add damage function, if self health manager, okay, so first we need to check if that health manager exists. We need to, because it might be missing. If health manager health is greater than 0, then we need to perform this camera shake. Otherwise, we need to have the player die. What is this kill function? Okay, so what this does is it basically activates this rigid body that's created just for the purpose of making the camera roll. And so actually that should be set self camera position. So we set it to the camera's position, and we set the mask to something that's not 0 so that it enables physics. We give it a little bit of a random velocity. That's probably too much, but it doesn't matter for this example. And then we set the camera parent to that corpse thing, and then that way what happens is from then on out, that object's gonna fall, and we add a little bit of velocity so it like slides to the side and it rolls a little bit, which looks better. And it's gonna, like, from your perspective, it's gonna look like your body just fell down and died, and the camera's going to roll a little bit. It looks good it's a good way of communicating the player death. Well, one problem I had when doing this was I couldn't figure out why, like, sometimes the player was staying alive even though the health was going below 0. The player was still staying alive. Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry. And the reason for that, okay, so I didn't like option A and I didn't like option B. So my solution was option C. What I did instead is I looped through all the components and I checked for a function called add damage, and then if it was present, then I called it for every single component in the multiple components. Okay. And that's when I had this problem. And I got it working, but then sometimes I would have a problem with the player they were getting killed, but they weren't dying. So this stuff that disabled the camera, this kill function, this was never being called. Well, why was that? And that bug hung around for a week. I wasn't, paying attention to everything, to just that alone. I mean, it was just one more thing because I was doing a lot of other things at the same time. But that bug hung around for a while, and I couldn't figure out why this was happening because I would check the player, and I was like, wait, the health value is less than 0. Why didn't this ever get called? Well, the reason why was because of the order the components were in. So what was happening is, in that case, the player add damage function was getting called first because it was further. It was I think it was first in the loop. Oh, and I can tell you why too, because I'm not sure if they were alphabetized or not. If table key pairs are alphabetized, but F comes before H, doesn't it? So the FPS player was probably being called before the health manager function was being called. That might have been what's going on. But so what would happen is the player add damage function was called, and the health manager function had not been called yet. So the health was still above 0. So it didn't call this kill function. And then second, the health manager function was being called, and then the health went below 0. And that's how the player was able to die without dying. That's why I had this zombie player that was I could still control them even though they were dead. That took a long time to figure out. That's one practical example that actually happened that confused me for a long time.
Yeah, I always get worried. It's like, okay, the order of how you add the components is very critical.
Well, okay, so we could solve that by either having like a priority defined in the components itself so that it's always sorted a certain way, or we could have it set so that you have like some controls in the editor that control which object is first in the order. But once you get to that point, that's really hard to explain. I didn't even think about that. Honestly, like, I did not even think about it until I realized what was happening. That it's really easy to make mistakes with that stuff, and it's really hard to explain it. And if people have to think that way, that gets really hard. It's easy to make mistakes with this stuff. And it's hard to figure out when you do have a mistake, it's hard to figure out what's going on.
Well, that's why I always, like, if I did add multiple components, the component was very isolated, had nothing to do with the other thing. So it's just like, it's just separate functionality on top of another thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, multiple components, it works great for separate functionality if everything is truly self-contained. Unfortunately, like it's the interaction between objects
that
that's really where the game play it
that's why
lives.
I avoided it. That's why I avoided at all costs. Like if I wanted a door to open, great. But if I wanted the door to change its light color, then I'll add the change emission component to it, and then I would like wire that up to the flow graph, which was gross and annoying. But yeah, that's how I would do that. But most of the time, I just use minor components.
It's easy to make mistakes with this stuff. So here's a solution. This isn't. I don't think this is what I did, but this is a way we could solve this. Okay, so the health manager has an add damage. Well, okay, this isn't a complete solution actually, but okay, let's say the health manager has an add damage function. Self health equals self health minus amount. Okay, now if self health is less than or equal to 0, then for each component in the entity, if the component has a function called kill, then call that function. Okay, so we're removing responsibility for that kill function. We're moving it onto the health manager. Okay. Now the FPS add damage function. If the health manager, actually that should just say if self health manager and self health manager health is greater than 0, then we'll perform the camera shake thing and we'll play this pain sound, and then in the FPS player kill function, then we'll play the death sound and we'll do all this stuff that sets the camera up to work with the physics to look like you died. There's still a problem because if this add damage function is called, now we're going to have the pain sound is going to play, and the death sound is going to play also. So you're going to have both of those being played. So here's the logic here. So we have the bullet update function. This starts in the bullet update function, and then we're moving over to this other entity. Everything on the right is the entity that the bullet is hitting. So now it's going to call the add damage function, and it's going to call the FPS player. It's going to call health manager add damage, and it's going to call FPS player add damage. We don't really know the order of that unless we explicitly define it. And then from the health manager function, we're going to call if the health goes below 0, then we're going to go back and call the kill function on all components that exist. Dude, this is so confusing. This is why the FPS player doesn't have a separate health manager component, by the way, because this is so complicated.
Remember when we were like writing the components for the FPS demos? It's like, oh yeah, you take the first person controls, and then you have to add footstep sounds to it, and then you have to add player interactivity to it, and then it only interacts with entities with the component, with the interact component. And it was just like you had to actually build the player like a Lego brick, like Legos. And then, I mean, it was just a lot.
So, yeah, I mean, the benefit of the multi-component system, like you said, is like if you have things that are truly isolated, then it is pretty handy for that.
Yeah, like changing the color or...
One really good example would be like the impact sounds for a collision. Like I have a script that if you just attach it to any object, if it hits a collision that's above a certain velocity, then it'll play a sound for that collision. That's definitely handy, and that definitely you could save some small amount of code by having that as its. That's like one really good example where the multi-component system has some benefit.
Right, instead of you making like a physics prop like component, and then you have to derive off that because and I also like that you can give entities components in real time. So if you want something like, let's say like the dissolve effect like in Cyclone, I can just make a trigger that just assigns a dissolve component when the box touches the fizzler, and the box would just fizzle automatically, and I don't have to like worry about what class it is or what object that is.
Yeah, I mean, it's not without some benefit in some circumstances. It's just, do the benefits outweigh the downsides is the question.
It depends how you use it, but well, that's pretty much it. You have to really think about how you use things.
Yeah, so what's going to give us the best overall outcome, especially focusing on beginners? Am I going to, like, I mean, look at this. Which one of these do you think I'm going to be able to teach? Okay, so option D. Okay, here's what I propose. This is the easy way. So we had option A. This is where you're looking for every specific component by name. That's not very good. Option B. This is when you're looking for one specific component where the thing you're looking for is only exists in that component. That also sucks. Option C, this is what I actually did. This is where you loop through every component that's present and you check to see if that function is present, and then you use it if it is present. That's better. You have two problems. One is the order that things are executed in. It can be a problem, and it's really easy to make mistakes with that. Another problem is if you want to retrieve a value from another entity. I guess all you can do is check if it exists, and then take the first one, and then just break the loop. And I guess you'll either take the first one, or if you don't break the loop, I guess you'll just get the last one. But it's like if you have two values that are the same property, which one's the real one? I don't know. It's anybody. How do I explain that? Well, some people like to do it this way. Well, which one's the real one? It's really up to you. It's just how you want to do it. Yeah, I don't really know which one, but most of the time it'll probably be fine as long as you don't make any mistakes. So just don't make any mistakes. I mean, that's what my explanation would be like.
Don't be stupid. You'll be fine.
Okay, option D is if there's an entity that was picked, then check if the entity has an add damage function attached to it. If it does, call it. You only have one. You don't even really have a component. You don't really have a separate object. You just have a script that adds properties to and functions to the entity itself. Okay, here's the add damage function. The health value is subtracted. The amount of damage is subtracted from the health, and then if self health is less than 0, do the camera shake and play the pain sound. Actually, I flipped those. This should be actually like if health is greater than 0, do that. Or if that's not the case, then you call this kill function, and then the kill function stays the same. You'll notice this is the only example where I was able to fit all the code onto one page.
Well, you also don't have to check if a component exists either.
So let's review this again. Here's the current approach. For inside a bullet update function, you're going to perform this ray cast, and then if the ray hits anything, for each component in the entity components, if the function exists, call the function. Well, what's the order these are being called in? I don't know. We could add some functionality to change that, to resort that, but you still need to even like think about it. And it's something that I didn't even like. It didn't even occur to me that could be the problem when I was hitting that problem of my zombie player, the player that would die but wouldn't die. Here's the proposed solution. You perform the raycast. If the raycast has an entity, if something was hit, check if the entity has an add damage function and call it. If you want to get all the entities in the area that have a health above 0 and are on a different team than this object and are holding a weapon, then you just check those properties directly on the entity itself. Otherwise, you have to loop through all the components, and then as soon as one of those conditions is hit, I guess you would break, and then I guess you would like say that okay, that's your new target. Let's say you're writing code for a turret, and you want to choose which entity to focus on. Then you check all those conditions on each component, and then break the loop twice, I guess. Yeah, it's just like the whole thing like really breaks down pretty badly when you get to the interactions between objects. Um, and other than like, I mean, Lua is used a lot in the game industry. I think Call of Duty uses it, probably still. I mean, it's been used. It's
now for Source. Valve uses it now for Source.
Really?
Yeah,
I didn't know
Robot Repair. Robot Repair has Lua scripts in it. I think the entire, I think that entire demo is dealt with core engine entities and Lua scripts.
Well, I mean, Lua has been used probably in thousands of games, so it's very popular. But none of the general purpose game engines, other than Roblox, use it. So Lua is our unique. It's pretty unique to Leadwerks as far as like the general purpose game engines. It's not unique to the game industry, but it is unique to Leadwerks as far as general purpose game engines go. There are, if we don't, with the current design, there's a lot of unique advantages that Lua has that we're leaving on the table. This last example is a lot simpler than these. I mean, you can add the script. You can have you could add a SEP script function to here, but even just like box script weapon ammo equals 50, or box get component FPS player dot weapon dot ammo equals 50. Well, with the approach I'm proposing, where we just take advantage of the nature of Lua, we just say box weapon ammo equals 50. Easy. Option A, this sucks. Option B, this also sucks. Option C, this is what I'm doing now. It's a little bit better. Still, having a loop for every single time you want to call a function on another entity, or set a value on another entity, or retrieve a value from another entity, having a loop for every single time you do that, I think it really discourages you even writing code where objects interact, and it makes it really hard to teach. And it's like that, the interaction between different objects, that's what the whole basis of gameplay is. Most gameplay is not a result of one object just doing something continuously. It's the result of the interactions between objects. Option D here, where you just get the entity and then you check if the entity has the function and call it. If it does, that's really, really simple. That's really easy. And it's easy for beginners to understand. It's easy for me to understand. Because I like conceptually with the multiple component thing, I always have trouble with like, well, which object is the real one? What type of object is this really? It's confusing for me.
Right, because I come from like Source Engine, so it's like an entity. So like a Combine soldier was a Combine soldier. It looked like a Combine soldier. It acted like a Combine soldier. It wasn't, it had an animation component. It had footstep sounds. It had, it was just a Combine soldier. You placed in the scene and it shot at you. Or
yeah, I mean the whole idea of like the multiple component thing, it seems like it's to defer decision making, to where like instead of deciding what something is when you're writing the code, you can decide what it is when you're assembling it in the editor.
Right.
But what we're seeing is, people are responding very well to video tutorials, and they're not afraid of code, and they're demanding, they're ravenous for more tutorials focused on gameplay, which I have not delivered yet, but that's the next step. And ease of use is the most important. That's the overall advantage of Leadwerks 5 that I'm communicating to the user. Let's take a look at the web page, at the main web page. Leadwerks 5 is powerful fun. The all-new version of the beginner-friendly game development system includes improved learning materials, powerful features, incredible performance, and a royalty-free license. Performance is still mentioned, but it's just like one of the things at the end. What's the first thing I say? Easy to learn. We believe that with the right teacher and the right tools, anyone can bring their creative vision to life. Leadwerks Game Engine 5 is designed from the ground up to be beginner-friendly, with plenty of learning materials to teach you how to create your own games, even if you have no coding experience. For experienced developers, our C++ programming API gives you added power and flexibility while retaining the user-friendly workflow Leadwerks is renowned for. And this isn't just made-up happy talk. This is the stuff that people actually say about Leadwerks. Unique features to help solo developers and small teams. This is my way of saying, basically the level editor, the flow graph system, the materials painting system, the overall ease of use of the editor. Performance is just a bullet point kind of towards the end, and the royalty free license. That's important, but it's really all about ease of use. Okay, so if that's what people are responding well to this, but I need to make sure I'm delivering on this when 5.0 goes out. We're still in early access. We can still make changes to the system, but once that goes out, we can't really make changes to the system at that point. And I've been saying for a while that I'm going to try very hard not to make any breaking API changes, and I think I've done a really good job of that. Because I can't think of any except other than the tiles, the 2D rendering system for tiles, which was added because the previous way was too difficult to use. Other than that, I can't think of any API changes really. So we've had a very stable graphics API, but what I am proposing here is something that's going to affect people's code. Going from this multiple component approach to this just attaching things directly to this is basically like a single script that just adds where instead of saying self dot script thing,
right,
instead of the self being a Lua table that's attached to the entity, that's associated with the entity, the self is the entity itself, which is something new that we can do in Sol. That's the change that I'm proposing. So we can't, existing Lua scripts, we can just make it so that the entity class will have a property that if you call self entity, it will actually just return itself. I could do that just to make things backwards component, but that does mean going from multi-component to basically a single script associated with the object. Godot uses uses that approach. Unity uses the multiple objects, multiple subtable approach. But for us, especially for Lua, it really seems like just being able to attach properties directly to the entity itself, and having that be the main 3D object. That seems like a dream come true. That's how I wanted Leadwerks 4 to work from the very start, but I couldn't do it because of limitations at the time.
Okay, the only thing I would say is that there's two things. One, I would stop calling them components and go back to actors. This way,
I'm way ahead of you on that.
Yeah, and then I want more functionality, since we cannot just add simple components. If we need a door that changes the emissive color, I need something that the entity, since you're deriving the actor from the entity, the actor should be able to do everything the entity can do, plus what the actor's supposed to do. So I need that flexibility, that ability.
Yeah, they're the same object. Like so what was previously a component is now just the entity with properties and functions attached to it.
That needs to be reflected on the component on the flow graph system, and you have to manage. Making the flow graph into a system where it ends up like Photo Museum, where there's a lot of nodes and lines going everywhere.
I like Photo Museum.
No, but
you know what's funny about so what he's referencing is Photo Museum is one game that's uses the flow graph very heavily, and it's like he's like fills the entire screen. It looks like spaghetti, but it's awesome that he's that's what he.
No, that's how I did a lot of my source engine stuff. I just used the Hammer IO system to like do a lot of crazy things, and I want that. It's just that the flow graph system at this time makes it very, very difficult to do that because it's very limiting.
What limitation are you talking about?
So like I can't change an entity's color in the flow graph. I actually have to write that code in to the actual actor.
So you want to be able to call any entity function with the flow graph.
Correct.
Okay, the way I'm actually thinking of that working would be not having it point to, because if you had every single entity function listed in the flow graph, then in each node, then it would be like each node in the flow graph would be like 5 screens tall.
Right.
I'm thinking like having a command that you drag into the flow graph, and then you just you have like a command that the output of one node would connect to a command that's like, it's not attached to an entity, it just sits there, it just only exists in the flow graph, but it's just a function that gets called, and that actually would be visual programming. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Some stuff like that would be, it's of limited use, but being able to like change the mass of something or change the color of something, if it's just like a one-time call function that needs to be called, that would be super handy. That's something that I would like to do in the future.
I was thinking something you would just like, instead of having a whole list of inputs and outputs, there would just be like a little like plus button that you get to add, and then you get to pick what.
Ooh, that's interesting too.
Yeah, and then
how would arguments be entered into that?
That is a good. I guess it would like take it, and then it would just what I mean is that instead of laying it all out, making the component like towards the skyscraper,
it would only show the ones that you're using.
Yes.
But okay. Think about how you would. That's an interesting idea. Think about how you would enter arguments into that. You don't have to answer right now, but
how I would what?
How would you? Okay, so let's say you want a function that sets the entity color. How would you specify the color that you want to set?
So that is So I guess that would be either you press a button, you hit set color, and a little section comes up with the RGB values of that. So it would be set color, and then the parameters will actually just be right there. So if I want something to be red, it would say, okay, entity A tells entity B to be set color, and then it's like, okay, what color do you want it to be? And it's right there, and you make it red. That's like without additional nodes. I'm trying to condense, not make any additional lines here.
So I'm not going to be able to get to anything like that for some time, but
so we're going back to like Leadwerks 4 limitations where there's no argument support or anything. And
we don't have argument support right now.
Oh yeah, well, that's the thing. We're going back to Leadwerks 4, pretty much what we had with Leadwerks 4, because at least with Leadwerks 5 you could have multiple components, and if you do need to change a color or something, you could. because you just add a change color component to it.
Well, you would have to have that be part of the script that you're
Yeah,
working with.
right. And like, you know, I kind of want. See, the thing is, I want that flexibility of the Hammer IO system where I could just take a bunch of a lot smaller parts and then just make one big contraption and just save as prefab. That's kind of what I want to do. Instead of coding an entire class to do one thing. Like the ball catcher should just be, it shouldn't have to be its own actor. It could have just been 2 models, a door, a sprite, and a few sounds. And
Well,
I can send you a lot of my Portal 2 stuff or my Portal stuff. It's just a lot of where I don't have source code access, but I was able to do a lot of crazy things because of how powerful that IO system was.
Yeah, I'm not really that familiar with how Source Engine works.
Well,
Let's take a look at the comments. The lead state just offloaded into by abstract too much. Last example reminds me of JavaScript, direct access to everything, very flexible. Area of effect skill that I could attach to any object that would damage surrounding players. That could be a component I can understand. I wouldn't care about other components. Don't understand. Let the player keep track of his own health with pencil papers. Yeah. Other than code readability, what's the functional advantage? I feel like you're taking composability away from level editors. It's more straightforward. Well, okay, so you have some, composability. Yeah, you have some benefit, but the disadvantages seem so massive. I can't teach people how to program with this. And that's what I can't teach people how to program with this, like, because I don't even understand it myself. Well, I mean, can you imagine what my explanation for this would be? Well, the first thing you need to do is decide how you want your system to work. Some people like to do it like this. You could really do it any way you want. I'm not really sure. I mean, right. I know, like, this, if I make a lesson on this, like, 80% of the people are going to drop out at that point. I guarantee you. I don't even understand this kind of stuff myself.
How long are you going to keep the component system in the engine?
I don't know. Right now we're just discussing, I'm just explaining the problems with this to you guys.
Yeah, and you want to do this before the 5.0 release, right?
Yeah, like a decision needs to be made before then.
Absolutely. Well, that's my point too. I mean, the cheapest, the less risky is just to release what you have now. But I understand, like, down the road, like, oh yeah, by the way, we're changing everything, and all your components don't work. I think that's why a lot of people got very upset because they were working on all these components and things.
Yeah, that sucks, but I have to go back. I've had to go back and change things several times. I had to go back and write a new renderer in OpenGL because Vulkan didn't work out very well. I had to go back and write a new script editor after putting all that work into Visual Studio Code to make that work. Sometimes you waste time and you go in the wrong direction, and when you figure out that you made a mistake, then what you have to do is correct that mistake. But I mean, the whole thing here is if I release what I have right now, then this, teaching people how to program games, that's not going to happen. That will never, no one will, like, beginners will never understand this stuff. I can't even explain it myself to them. I can't even explain it in a coherent way. And the whole success of this hinges on, can I take these people that are beginners and there we have different, we have varying levels of skill in the community, but overwhelmingly those are the people who are paying for it. Those are the people who are funding everything because there's so many more of them. For every one person who is a skilled game developer, there's 1,000 others who are not yet but have potential, and they're willing to learn and they're willing to pay money for it. But I have to deliver on this. I have to teach them how to program games in a video tutorial. And if I'm stumbling over my words, and if I'm telling them, well, which object is the real one, I don't really know. It's up to you. However you want to do it, really. I'm not really sure. If I can't even explain it in a coherent way, how are they going to possibly understand it? And I can just rewind, to myself, to like how I thought when I was learning like Dark Basic and Blitz 3D. If you showed this to me, I would be like, I wouldn't understand it. I don't even understand it right now. Trying to make something like this work. Yeah, this is horrible. So I hate to break compatibility with people's existing code. I did a good job of avoiding that with the API, but here's a situation where the situation has changed quite a bit since we started. So what other option do I have? Do I just release this with something do I make a few people happy so that I can let down tens of thousands of people?
Well, the cheapest, or the less risk of. The thing is, the you have an opportunity here to not do anything, but not doing anything is a non-decision, because you could just write your components to be mono.
No, you can't, because what I'm saying is like the entity itself is the component. So that really doesn't work. That's why that doesn't work.
So it's not just the communication part, it's like how the code looks itself.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so you're right that just releasing it as is right now, that's not risky because I already know what the outcome is. The outcome of that is I don't deliver on that thing that Leadwerks 4 didn't fail to deliver on. I'm not able to teach beginners how to program games. Overall participation is going to be low. A few people will be happy, but then the engine will die because it's not really going to, it's just going to, there'll be a little bit of a bump in activity, and then it's going to die out because this is too damn complicated. Look at this. Every single time you want to retrieve a value from another entity, every single time you want to set a value to another entity, every single time you want to call a function on another entity, you need a for loop. You need to check on every single component. Well, why don't we have subcomponents? Let's make it even more complicated. Let's add another layer of abstraction. I mean, why not at this point? Every single time you have like all of this stuff, this is all tedious stuff that most people aren't going to understand. It causes a lot of, we have the order of execution problem that tripped me up for about a week. That was really hard to figure out it was really hard to figure out what was going on with that. This is really like just sabotaging their user experience. If I'm trying to teach them how to program, I'm doing them a huge disservice with this. I feel like I feel bad trying to, I feel like if I make a video about this, I feel like I should start with an apology. You're like, well, some people ask for this. I don't really understand it myself, but Unity does this, and we have to copy what Unity's doing, so you understand how it is. I guess I just had to do it, and really, this Unity does it, and we have to copy Unity, and so I guess what I'm really saying is Unity is better, and you should be using them, because all I can do is copy what they're doing.
Well,
so
I mean, back with Ultra Engine, we wanted Unity customers to all
Yes.
Unity
And
customers.
so that made a lot of sense to try to make them comfortable. That's not really those are not the people that are coming along. The people who are coming along are mostly beginners who have no previous experience at all. And there's tens of thousands of them, hundreds of thousands of those people.
Right.
And they're happy. They're you know, they're hungry for more. So how can I deliver to them what is needed? Before, if I was like, well, I'm going to be hands off on this. I'm just going to write the documentation. I'm not really responsible for teaching you how to program. I don't use this stuff in the SCP game at all. I just write the class that I want to. I just write the code to do the thing I want.
Right.
I don't use this at all in the SCP game, but I didn't really care if I wasn't responsible for teaching people how to program. I was just like, okay, I'll just give people I don't even know if it's the majority are asking for this or not, but it's a popular feature request. I'll do it this way and people will be happy. Okay, well, if I have to teach people how to program, that changes things quite a lot. If I'm responsible, then for that, oh, okay.
Well, if we're going to mono like the actor approach, would it just makes more sense to have the actor have a set entity type or class that it's supposed to be? Like going back to like the Combine Soldier, it loads the Combine Soldier model automatically. You don't have to load a model of the Combine Soldier and attach the Combine Soldier actor to it. You just drag in the Combine Soldier and it's there.
Well, that's what a prefab is.
Well, that's what a prefab is, but it's that with additional step. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, you could set that up yourself. I don't want to introduce that because I don't want to have multiple ways. That doesn't cover all the things that you need, and so I don't want to have like multiple ways of doing the same thing.
Can you make a prefab not lock itself for that purpose? So let's say if I do want a Combine Soldier, I just make a prefab, but then I want like to change like its starting health or something. I don't want to break the prefab every time. I kind of just want to just drag and drop, edit, and continue.
So you want it to be a prefab, but you want it to. So what happens if you go back and change the original prefab file? If you change the default health value?
Well, it would just act like it's already broken. Pretty much, I'm just asking for the prefab to be automatically broken on drag and drop. But I don't know how that would be implemented or.
It doesn't. It sounds like you want it to be a prefab, but you also don't want it to be a prefab. Well, I would just add the prefab, and then that's just one step to right click on it and break the prefab.
I guess.
Yeah, it's always. I mean, it's always a. You have to always like make these decisions on like what's the best overall outcome, because there's specific things you could do that would be better in one situation and better in another, but then there's a downside you also have to look at.
Right, but why would I attach a relay to a model?
Maybe you want to.
I don't know, I would just put
Who am I to judge the crazy things that people do? For the gameplay tutorial, the kind of stuff I actually want to get into, I'm thinking I'm gonna do the marble game to start with, and then I want to do a second gameplay tutorial, and I don't even have like a specific type of game in mind. I don't want to say like here's a tutorial for an RPG, here's a tutorial for a first-person shooter, here's a tutorial for a racing game. I want to because with all of those things, if you're focused on the outcome, on the type of game it is, then you have a lot of stuff that goes into it that's just satisfying some requirements but doesn't really teach you much. I think I kind of want to just make a crazy game and just focus 100% on the gameplay mechanics. So maybe it will have a gun, maybe it'll be third person, maybe it'll be a first person view, maybe it'll switch at some point during development. maybe there'll be enemies, maybe there'll be a turret. And I'm just going to add it. I don't really, without thinking what kind of game it is, I think I'd like to add a turret. Maybe the turret then will evolve into a zombie or like a soldier. Maybe you'll have a gun that shoots grenades, and then you'll have a gun that shoots, and then I'll show how to make a cluster grenade. So this is the kind of crazy stuff that I used to do with Quake. You shoot a grenade, and then when the grenade explodes, 5 more grenades spawn. And then those are normal grenades, because if you shoot a cluster grenade that spawns cluster grenades, then you're going to have a cascading increase of the number of grenades until you run out of memory and your game crashes. And then maybe you'll have maybe I'll make a chicken grenade, so it'll shoot like an egg, and then when it hits something, a chicken appears, like a fully grown chicken. I don't know how, and then the chicken will start chasing whatever enemy is near it and attacking the enemy, and then after a few seconds the chicken will explode. And then like just the crazy, I mean, I'd like to focus 100% on just mechanics and show how that interaction between objects and how spawning new objects, how that can be, how to control that. Because if I can communicate that knowledge to people, then they can make any kind of game with that. If they understand how like the basic principles of like the interaction of objects, that's where the game mechanics are. If I can teach them that, then I can teach them game. Then they know game programming. Well, I wouldn't make a change unless there was a really good reason for it. I hate breaking compat. I know how much that sucks, but the fact is it's still an early access product. And a lot of if I knew ahead of time, if I knew exactly how the market was going to respond, how and that means like everyone collectively, how people were going to respond to something, then I would be very wealthy. But nobody told me this, and it's not anybody's fault because nobody could have told me this, and a lot of this stuff is like weird, like nobody anticipated that the whole game industry would become like schizophrenic. The whole tech industry would go sort of like either schizophrenic or extremely dishonest. Because they're like, on one hand, they're like promoting stuff and saying that it's the best thing ever. On the other hand, like they don't really want to use it themselves. So I definitely feel like I was sort of like led in the wrong direction. And, correcting, we see a positive effect by correcting course. And I think there's some unique advantages with Lua there's some unique things that we have with Lua that we're not taking advantage of right now. This is how I wanted Leadwerks 4 to work. I just wanted the entity itself to be the object. I didn't want to have this separate script object attached to the entity. This is what I always wanted it to be. And if we're writing a system for beginners to use Lua primarily, then this makes a lot of sense. So I'm trying to explain this in a great detail because I want people to understand it. So anyways, so again, check out my blog post here. It's pretty interesting. You might get some cool knowledge out of that. Escape Land and Salvation Land are on sale until Monday. Pick them up this week. Support your fellow developers, and it's these are both pretty fun. Escape Land is more polished, but they're both pretty fun. But like Escape Land is the more polished one. And yeah, if you like Stalker and that kind of game, this is made with Leadwerks 4. It's kind of, I think of this as sort of like, it's sort of like all the best games for any console come towards the end of life for that console. And so this is sort of like the equivalent of that. This came, towards the end of Leadwerks 4 when Leadwerks 5 is about to be released. But they did such a fantastic job with this, so I definitely want to try to help support them. I bought it and I play it. I think I'm gonna play it today. Maybe I'll do some maybe I'll try like doing some streaming. I've never done streaming with the Steam, through Steam, but maybe I'll try doing that this weekend.
You should stream all of the Leadwerks 4 games.
Well, I can't do them all this weekend, but if I do, I think this would be a good one to start with. I think there's some way you can stream to the, let's see. There's some way I can stream to this page here. I don't know if that many people will see it, but it would still, and I can also record it and play it on YouTube. I think I might do that. Might do like a playthrough of like, at least for like half an hour or whatever. Demon's Game is also on sale. That's a pretty good horror game. It's scary. 71 cents too in the US. Dang. Yeah, that game is scary. That game is genuinely frightening. You know what's funny is the game that's actually getting the most traffic is actually Photomuseo 3D.
Because it's so weird. I had a friend pick it up, and it was like, and they were like, "Wow, this is like very weird." It's just like he does so much that the engine just bogs down.
The performance is not great. Yeah, but it is like, what kind of game is this? It's just like there's so many things to do in this, and there's so many different settings, and I really love the there's a lot of like the developers like personal story. Like there's a lot of like really personal touches. There's a lot of reading of like, you don't have to, but there's a lot of like notes scattered through the levels. And there's a lot of storytelling in it.
Like these screenshots look like one of those 1990s panoramic like pre-rendered games that you could play. I don't know if you're familiar with that era of like
what was the big one?
Like the Journeyman Project games and Myst and games
yeah,
like
Myst
that.
is the one I was thinking of. Yeah, it's
has that feel to it. The screenshots, I mean, at least.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. Anyways,
like they don't look photorealistic. They kind of look, at least from the stream, they kind of look like, I don't know, they look like a 90s CGI almost.
Yeah, especially in the museum
like
shots.
That reflection on that giant reflection, like crisp reflection there. Just
yeah, it's pretty interesting.
The marble is very 90s.
Yeah, I love seeing the stuff that people come up with though.
I say that all very affectionately.
Something exclusive live. Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe I'll do some streaming. Maybe I'll try it out. Okay, so do we have any other questions? That's all I got for this week.
I guess when like a lot of people say, sounds like you're very final about making that decision with the components. When do you expect that change to go into effect?
I have not made any decision yet.
Okay.
It sounds like you really, really want to do it, and you're just afraid of upsetting existing users. But it sounds like you think that's the right decision, just from what I heard you say. But
Well, I just want to make my reasons very, very clear.
yeah.
And for C++, that would just be deriving it off of the entity class instead of the object class.
No, I actually experimented with that. Like, with virtual inheritance, it's actually possible to have like it's really weird. Like, so you can have like a player class that you declare and have it derived from the entity class. Okay, well the
Right.
problem there is like what if you want a model, a 3D model? The model class is also derived from the entity class. Well, what you can actually do is declare a superclass that's like derived. You can call that a player model, and that's derived from both the model and the player. Well, the model and the player are both derived from the entity, so doesn't that form a problem? Well, that's actually a solved problem because C++ supports virtual inheritance. Otherwise, it's called the diamond problem. When two objects are inherited, when you inherit from two objects that are inherit from the same object from the same class, it's called the diamond problem. C++ has virtual inheritance. I didn't even know this until like a week ago. I didn't know about this, and so I saw that and I was like, oh, it's actually possible to make like the entity the same thing as the gameplay class itself, as the actor or whatever. You just have to have control over how that's created. And so I was thinking about this complicated system where you have like some auto-generated code that generates all possible combinations of your classes and the entities, which there's only about 7 or 8 different entity classes in the engine. And then you have a callback function that fetches that where it would create whatever type of object it is, and that would go back to anything in the engine that creates a new entity. So that includes 3D, when a model is loaded, when a scene is loaded, when an object is copied. It would be possible. The problem is, well, one complication is like if you load a model, for example, you can't just attach an actor to a limb in the model. You would have to replace that limb because the type of thing it is has to be known at creation time. You can't just dynamically change its class unless there's some crazy way to do that in C++ that I don't know about, but I don't think there is. And I was still like, okay, this might be a good idea, but then I realized you still like if you're going through a loop of entities, you still have to cast the entity to whatever derived like object class it is. Like if you have an entity, you still have to cast it to a player in order to access those player properties.
Right.
Well, functionally, so you can't. It's not like Lua where you can just access everything at all times. You have to cast it to that class. Well, that's an extra step. Functionally, that's not much different. Instead of saying like entity as player, what if it's just entity actor as player? There's not much difference between those two things. You still have to perform that step to get the player.
Right.
So then I saw that and I was like, yeah, there's not really, this is a fair amount of extra complexity and the benefit really isn't there. So I think in case of C++, I think just entity dot actor is the way to go. So like player.
Yeah. Yeah. So the entity actor. Okay, but in the player class.
Yeah, the player class itself would have, if I did that, the player class itself would have access to the entity. You could do things like,
Change its color, have access to protected members, and all that good stuff.
Well, it would be if I did that, which I don't think it's a good idea. But if I did that, it would, you could do stuff like, let's just, since this is an entity, let's just call turn. You can do stuff with like this with Lua. With C++, if I jumped through those hoops, you could do this, but I don't think it's a good idea.
So so pretty much you're proposing that you just go what you did in Leadwerks 4, where an entity has an actor, and then you just assign the actor to the entity.
Leadwerks 4 didn't have any support for anything for C++ at all.
Yes, it did. It had the actor class.
It did? Okay.
Yes, it did. That's how Cyclone works.
Okay, it didn't have any integration with the editor. It was just entirely up to you.
I had to write that myself.
Right.
Yeah, so the actor had an entity pointer, so you still had to say entity turn, entity.
Right. So yeah, that doesn't change. So in the only difference is in Leadwerks 5, I'm using a weak pointer for the entity, so you just need to call like get entity to retrieve that weak pointer.
So if you're in C++, nothing will really change.
Not really. I don't think.
Okay.
You'll call set actor instead of add component, but that's about the only difference. So I don't like the code itself, except for the interaction of objects. I don't think the code itself for either Lua or C++ really needs to change. It either needs, so I think the code itself either needs no changes or very minimal changes. It's just the way the system works that would change as a result of this, which based on what I've described here, I think it would be for the better.
Yeah, I think. Well, I just want to know if this change happens, do I have to delete every reference to entity to self or something stupid?
No, I think the code will still stay the same.
Again, I'm in a position where I use mono components, so I'm gonna be the least affected of everyone, because I found, again, besides those little opportunities, I don't use my multi components.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I won't disagree that there are some situations where that can be beneficial, but it's kind of like the ramifications of that are worse than the cure is worse than the disease. Like it also introduces some very, very significant downsides. It looks like ML the storyteller is streaming. I did not understand. I did not realize he was. I think you were saying that you wanted to. Were you saying that you have something to show? Oh, okay. I mean, I'm streaming. Okay. We can watch this. We can watch whatever you're showing and include it in the video if you would like. If you're ready. Emil the storyteller. Let me know.
I'm just starting streaming just for fun. If you want to see, I'm streaming.
Yeah, I want to see. I always want to see what he's doing. Oh, are you just playing the game? Awesome. Okay, cool.
Some new content we're working on. New cutscenes.
Is this all animated externally?
It's a Blender stuff.
Yeah, so you did all the animations in Blender and just have the engine just play it?
Yes.
Okay.
It's not finalized yet, but some of the cutscenes here. Working on some levels. It's a town named Arsarsk. It's really work in progress. Just a few days. For a few days. Some atmospheric sketch. Experiment with the shaders a bit, with the depth of field effect and colorfulness inside the
Looks like
iris adjustment.
looks like the engine's handled this well. What's your average frame rate, and what card are you playing this at?
Well, it's about 15 or 14.
14 frames.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Most of the time it's 14.
Yeah, if you did
No
this
one
in,
here around.
if you did this in a new engine, a lot of that bottleneck will be eliminated. You should be able to do this 60.
Yeah. We'll try to put some levels on the Leadwerks 5 maybe a year ago. It was really fun, and the FPS got a boost. But we're still on the Leadwerks 4 because of the stable base here.
Right.
It's important for us to make the games on a stable base.
Well, you can also help frame rate by making the post-processing effects optional. And then you can also, and if you use brushes over models, like the buildings, if you can make those brushes instead of models, those will help. Because brushes are a cost at load time, but they're not cost at runtime. That's why Cyclone runs very, very well, because most of the game is brushes.
Yeah, we're trying to use 3D models instead of brushes, but
yeah, but you have the
for the
cost of
prototyping, it may
Yeah.
help with prototyping.
I don't think that's accurate. Because it's just the, I mean, internally they're the same they're the same system, unless there's something from Leadwerks 4 that I don't remember.
No. I did this test. I did 100 boxes or 1,000 boxes, and I did.
That's
them as
because they were
brushes.
separate objects.
Right, but with brushes, they automatically
They get
collapse.
merged. Yeah, but I mean,
Yes.
but he's got. I mean, you were constructing a situation where, I mean, his building is just one object, so
Right, maybe.
it's not made up of 100 different objects. In Leadwerks 5, you actually could have 100 different
Right,
individual
doesn't matter.
objects, and it wouldn't really matter. You could have 10,000, and it wouldn't matter.
Right, I think games like this would benefit from Leadwerks 5.
Yeah.
Especially since there's acrylic support, you don't have to make them bitmaps. You can just use text and have localizers, a translation layer.
Oops. Partners down.
Oh,
That's cool.
that was awesome.
Yeah, a lot of game development is just like having an artist.
That's so cool.
Is this all in C++ or is this Lua?
Lua.
Ah, cool. I could never make a game like this in Lua. I get very, very frustrated with Lua very fast.
Well, we have some systems on C++, like gamepad and
so you write
Steam achievement realization.
So you write
Our custom one.
So you write abstractions from C++ and then expose them to Lua.
Well, we're trying to use the C++. We actually, well, we did it on a custom loader. it's a specific code like controller support. Not too much code of on C++ in these projects.
Yep.
It's 99% of Lua.
Can never do it. I would be always worried about runtime errors.
A lot of flow graph editing.
Right,
And
I'm pretty sure that's a spaghetti mess too.
the boss here. Now another partner is dead, so game is over. We need to start again, but I don't want to. Well, it's like the piece of that we are just working on these days. Nothing much, but well, we was busy with the new Salvation Land update. Most of the last weeks, it's backporting some features from Escape Land, and making the Steam achievements, kind of stuff. So now we are just done with it and back in the work in the Escape Land. So that's all for now.
It's got a really good
I
soundtrack
guess.
too.
Oh, thank you.
I think the soundtrack for Escape Land is available separately, right?
It is. It's gonna be not yet, but as the game will release full release in Steam, of course we share it the soundtrack too.
Yeah.
It will be free.
Either it was either Salvation Land or Escape Land. I listen to the soundtrack to it sometimes. I think it might be on YouTube.
Yeah.
But I would listen to it when I
yeah.
write code sometimes, because if you like the stalker kind of stuff, it's very cool. Okay, yeah, thank you very much for the preview. Or the yeah. Yeah, Escape Land is available on Steam on sale until Monday. Get it, support your fellow developers, and have fun doing it. All right, guys, I've got a roast beef sandwich waiting for me.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining,
See ya.
and have a good weekend.